All right, hi, I am Madison Margolin, co-founder of Jewish Psychedelic Summit, and we have Yahav Erez with us. She is interested in changing society's perception of psychedelics through different channels. She's the founder of the Israel chapter of Students for Sensible Drug Policy and Toda'a Raba, the first psychedelic podcast in Hebrew, together with Matan Ben Moshe. As a graduate of media studies at Sapir Academic College and an MA student in the Science, Technology, and Society program at Bar Ilan University, Yahav is interested in psychedelics as a medium constructed as any other technology. Part of this construction is the formulation of local knowledge regarding safe and beneficial use, mainly revolving around harm reduction initiatives at festivals, in which she is both a volunteer and a researcher. Well, thank you for interviewing with me, and I'm really excited to hear more about your work. So, yeah, is there anything you want to start off with before I jump into the questions?
Wow. No, I'm good. Let's start.
Okay, cool. So, why did you start the first psychedelic podcast in Hebrew?
Well, I grew up here in Israel, and my first language is Hebrew. I was very interested in psychedelics after the first time I had tried them myself, and I was reading books and listening to podcasts, and everything was in English. And I was listening to these podcasts, and my mind was blown. And I was thinking to myself, a lot of my friends would love this content, but they would never listen to it in English. Lots of times it's very academic or research oriented, and the kind of thing that the average Israeli, even if they're a little more interested, and even if they read books, and even if their English is in high level, they probably wouldn't listen to it if it's in English. It's just a little too much for many Israelis. And I really believe that information, especially about consciousness and mind expanding substances, should be as accessible as possible in as many languages as possible. And so my language is Hebrew. So that's why I thought, wow, there is no psychedelic podcast in Hebrew, so let's create one. And pretty quickly people started getting very excited about it, and people even asked to come get, participate, get interviewed. And it's become like an institution. We even have, wow, I didn't bring it with me. I'll show you later, but we even have like stickers, bumper stickers that we've started giving out. And
I want some. And then just what have been some of the most popular episodes of the podcast? Like what are the most popular episodes about, really? Just to see what the Hebrew speaking audience is into.
Well, actually the first episode is the most popular. It's got about 15,000 listeners, which is in Israel considered a lot for such a niche subject and a niche language. Mm-hmm. And it's about harm reduction initiatives and festivals and raves. And we've also got an episode about lucid dreaming, an episode about a tribe in southern India that enters states of trance without using any substance at all, and how they can reach states of very radical immediacy through these ceremonies. It's interesting how actually the episodes that don't really have anything to do with psychedelics as substances, but more as the essence of the psychedelic, consciousness, are the most popular. Mm-hmm. And we have researchers, artists, therapists, poets, all kinds of different people talking about psychedelics each from their own angle. And it's really great. It's become lots of fun.
That's so cool. It should be a reason I should learn Hebrew better. I take it there's no English translations yet of the podcast. That would defeat the purpose almost.
No, there is no. By the way, it's important to say the name of the podcast for those of you who understand a little bit of Hebrew. So Toda'a Raba is thank you very much, but Toda'a Raba, Toda'a means consciousness, and it sounds kind of like the word Toda. So we called it Toda'a Raba, very much consciousness, I guess you could call it, or many consciousness.
That's so
cute.
The
play on words.
I love that. So How
Thank
are
you.
psychedelics connected to opposing the occupation? Just to switch topics a little bit here.
Okay, so in recent years, I've become very active against the occupation. I am Israeli, and this is my home, and I grew up here, and this is my place as a Jew and as an Israeli. But I do feel that the the war crimes that are being done in the name of my religion, in the name of my people, in the name of my country, are not something that I can just live with. It's not something that I can just, go about my business without forming some kind of opposition to it. And it's happening like right here, like literally a few kilometers away is what is called the Green Line, or the separation wall, or there's a lot of different names for it. How is this connected to psychedelics? I believe that, if you're going to develop your consciousness, and if you're going to be on a path of learning and expanding and growing throughout your life, at a certain point, you can, as I did, get to a point where social justice is not separated and is not opposed to the inner growth. So if my inner growth can reach a certain glass ceiling, because I, as an oppressor, will never be free as long as the oppressed are still under the oppression, then, my consciousness expansion and my learning and my activism are all connected. If I want to be free in my mind, in my consciousness, and I want to be free in my body, in my community, I want people to be free. There's many different kinds of freedom. I'm also very, I didn't mention this in the questions, but I'm very much into feminist activism as well. And I believe, and vegan activism, and I really believe that they're all connected. I can go and drop acid as much as I want to forget about, all the day-to-day things that are happening that seem like they're just a burden. But the truth is, I'm never going to be able to run away from what's happening right under my nose, as we say in Hebrew. And these things are happening, like I said, in my name, in the name of my people. And no psychedelic is going to help me run away from that in and of itself. If I'm going to use psychedelics to expand my consciousness, then they will also help me to expand, my heart, and to use my consciousness that has been expanded to, reach out to the other side, and also reach out to my people and try to, influence the situation. And I really believe that if I'm not going to use the power that I have, the privilege that I have, the consciousness that has been expanded, then what is it worth? Like I really do believe in freedom, and cognitive liberty is just the beginning of it. Some people are living under such oppression that they can't even think of cognitive liberty at that point. And I really believe that I can't have this journey go to waste, and just spend my life, not worrying about things that really do worry me. Yeah, I could talk about it till tomorrow night, but how is it connected? Freedom is if you want it in one word.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like both like waking you up, not just you, but like the general you, whoever's kind of taking a psychedelic, like waking people up to the situation, like you said, right under your nose. But I think also like it's sort of like not just a something that shows you this truth, but also is almost a means of dealing with it, right? Like I wrote an article a couple of years ago about how like acknowledging trauma is part and parcel to the peace process and like working through that trauma. And so with psychedelics being tools that people are now using and researching to treat trauma, you know, I don't expect there to be a psychedelic, I don't expect everyone in Israel Palestine to have access to psychedelics and treat their trauma that way, but I think there's a way to use psychedelic consciousness to sort of open up that conversation about healing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I really, oh, sorry.
No, go
The
on.
connection is a little bad. What I was going to say was trauma is very much a key here. Trauma healing is very much a key, and also I feel that compassion is very much a key. And if there's one of the most magnificent gifts that I've received from using psychedelics is compassion, more compassion in my life. So it's more compassion towards myself, and it's more compassion towards other people that are supposed to be my enemies. This is what I was raised to think. And when you realize that they are not your enemies, and compassion to them will only bring more compassion to you, and even more than that, the people who think differently than me, like the right-wing Israelis or the settlers, they're not my enemies either. And the compassion to those people who are, or the compassion to even soldiers and high-ranked generals in the army who are really being supposed to be held accountable for these things, still deserve compassion. No matter who you are and what you're doing and what you're responsible for, you deserve compassion. So it's like, from the poorest, a most oppressed person living on this land to, the prime minister who I'm opposed to politically, but I still have compassion for. And that's something that psychedelics have taught me as well.
Well, I think a lot of it comes from like that feeling of like oneness, which they say is like like psychedelic scientists who research the quote mystical experience of like one of the criteria is a sense of oneness. And like what you're saying reminds me of this scene from the book Shaviti. I don't know if you've read it, but it's about a Holocaust survivor who does LSD therapy, I think in the 80s, and he's having this sort of like reliving a lot of his traumatic memories. And he says that at one point he almost like became this Nazi soldier on the other side of things. And he was thinking about like, what is that Nazi soldier feeling in this moment? Like, whereas like the like, he's like, does this person really want to be out here in the cold at 6 a.m. like herding a bunch of Jews onto a train or something like that? And not to say that this isn't even a matter of right and wrong, but just recognizing the humanity on all sides of the equation, I think, is really important. But I think
Definitely.
also people do put a lot of stock in psychedelics as a solution or an eye opener or whatever. And I think that leads really well into the next question, which is, how are psychedelics not necessarily the quote magic pill for ending any form of oppression?
So yeah, this is also a very important point. A lot of Israelis use psychedelics, and they're still, part of the problem. I call it part of the oppression, complying with the occupation, or not even acknowledging that there's an occupation. And the fact that someone takes psychedelics is not going to make them, the peace warriors that we expect them to be, or the all encapsulating, I don't know how to say this, wokeness that you might think that psychedelics will give someone in and of itself. There are many things that opened my eyes and opened my heart and opened my mind in addition to the psychedelics. So like the journey that I've been through, the psychedelics have always been there, intermittently, but there have been other things like, academia, reading more about history, people that I've met, movies that I've watched, other forms of spiritual practice like Vipassana meditation. All those have taught me a lot of, how to be more compassionate and how to use the compassion to fight for justice, and not, not let the fight for justice, weigh out the compassion for everybody. but really more using the compassion for it. And my consciousness has been expanded in many ways. First, first way would be my parents, who just taught me to think in radical ways and taught me about, power dynamics and things that they spoke about at home from a very young age. And I think this is like I have to say thank you to the major consciousness expanders of my life, who are my mother and father, and also acknowledge that not everybody has that from a very young age. So you have to really search, you have to really reach out to go and learn about these things, and kind of learn how systems of power work. And it's not easy. Like even I had to go through a bachelor's degree until I really understood what is going on here, because I reached the age of, I'd say, about 28 without knowing such basic history about what has been going down. So it's also a lot about learning and a lot about reading, which are also forms of consciousness expanding. Right. But yeah, the psychedelics are not enough. It has to go together with a lot of other research, I'd call it.
Or like the integration of it too. It's like, there's psychedelics don't automatically make you enlightened. And, you see also in America, there's so much psychedelic use, even in like the alt-right and like in circles that are problematic, so to speak. And, again, it's like you can have these realizations while you're tripping, but like, so what? Like, to what end if you're not actually then like living that out in your day-to-day life, like in sort of like sober, mundane living? Like, what is the action there? So, and that kind of, I guess, leads a little bit into the next question too. So how do psychedelics go together or against conservative society versus religious society?
So in that sense, I'd say you'd expect, in a very simplistic way, you might expect people who grew up in a religious home and are, devout believers of their religion and practice their religion to necessarily be more conservative in their mindset. And that's not true at all. Like when you look at what's happening on the ground, you can see that some people are very, very secular and very conservative, and some people are very religious and spiritual and very progressive thinkers. And one example is a lot of Orthodox Jews here that use psychedelics. I've also encountered people of faith, of other faiths, who are connected to their faith and are practicing and do connect to their spiritual path and their religion. But it doesn't necessarily make them doesn't necessarily make them more conservative. Although there are also times when it does go together. So you should never judge, and you never know who you're speaking to and what's going on and what type of person is standing before you. But in my experience, my psychedelic experiences had made me connect more to the spiritual side of Judaism and connect to my lineage and the ancient parts of Judaism, which I really, really appreciate. And it made me be happy that I'm part of the Jewish people. So much that I feel that we're here to do something. Like, we're not just put here for nothing. Not necessarily as like a chosen people, but more, I'd say, like in Judaism, we say in our prayers that God chose us as a people. And I feel like we were chosen maybe in a different way, or maybe we need to choose ourselves to really do something important. And the way I see it is, throughout the past, 100 years, some people say 73 years, but I call it more than 100 years, depends when you start counting. But we were, I was born here. I didn't choose to be part of this situation, but I am. And I'm happy that I am, because I feel like I have a role as a Jew, as an Israeli, as someone who's part of this, part of the Zionist project, you'd call it. I feel that it's really important, and it came from more spiritual realizations, that it's really important that I speak up about the occupation. It's really important that I open my eyes and educate myself about what's going on, because sadly a lot of Israelis are raised to be very poorly informed about the situation, and meanwhile people are suffering. Jews as well, by the way. A lot of people are suffering from the situation, but um, I I feel like, there's a purpose, and the feeling of purpose, comes from a feeling of being part of a long line of people who didn't just say, okay, this is the situation, we'll just live with it, but decided to change something, decided to do something about it. So that's like a little part of how I connect between, the spiritual part, the more progressive thinking, and yeah.
That really resonates so much with me. And I guess this kind of also, all the questions, thank God, are kind of leading into each other. But how did psychedelics impact your relationship with Judaism? And then on the flip side, how did Judaism impact your relationship with psychedelics?
Well, I feel that, I mean, everybody could probably say this about their faith, but I feel like Judaism has a lot of spirituality about it that I had discovered, rediscovered within my psychedelic experiences. Um, I was raised like kind of, I'd say, not religious, but very, practicing to a certain extent, and mainly with, knowledge about Judaism. And my father taught me how to read the Torah, not just for my bat mitzvah, but, for so that I could actually know how to do it for a long time. And I I feel like the psychedelics kind of reintroduced me to what the special things are about my religion, about the place where I live, where I call home, um, about how it is to a certain extent, holy, but the holiness of it will only be real when there's justice, and when everybody living here will have freedom and will have, their rights. Um, and these are things that came to me, during psychedelic experiences, about how, like, wow, this place really is special. Like, and not only because people are willing to die for it and kill each other for it, but for totally different reasons. And people willing to die for it is just a symptom. It's just a bad symptom of what's going on. But it doesn't need to be that way. We can do it differently. And we can use the spirituality of our religions, of very special religions, I feel like are connected to this land. I've learned more throughout, the past few years about other religions, that people that live here, and how they're connected to this place. And it just connected me more and more to my religion, and how, I have something to give them. And the more I connect to my own religion, that's what I have to offer to this really special place, just like they're offering it to me when I learn about it and when I'm exposed to it. How did Judaism impact my relationship with psychedelics? Well, like, as I said, I think that Judaism is very spiritual and very connected to, especially the Hebrew letters. It's hard for me to explain, but, and it's not only about Kabbalah. I think it began much earlier, but something about the Hebrew, to me, is very, very special and very connected to psychedelics. And you can even see in the famous painting by Alex Gray, the stoned ape theory painting, where the stoned ape is like, there's letters coming out of his mouth, and you can see like some of the biggest letters are Hebrew letters, and I don't think that's a coincidence. So yeah,
Remember which
some
letters?
thoughts from. I actually think I do. I think there was a Aleph Vav Hey, but I'm not sure about it. I can check that later.
Do those letters have any specific like spiritual significance to you? And this is something I've also started to study, is like how the shape of the letter has inherent meaning in and of itself. So I would be really curious to look into that with the gray painting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is there anything?
Every letter has a special meaning.
Yeah, exactly. And also Victoria Hanna, I think, who's
Mm.
also presenting in this conference, she's done a lot of work on that. And just sort of, if you even look at like the Vav, for instance, and like the shape of the mouth, and like it's kind of like this vertical, like direct connection, like through like the O sound, just understanding the relationship between the letter on the page and the shape of the mouth, and then like what's happening vibrationally and in which directions, I think is so fascinating and very psychedelic without any substances at all. So is there anything else that I didn't ask you that you want to talk about or add, or just kind of free form now?
Well, I'm getting very political because that's just what I do, but I want to say something about the connection between politics and religion for Jews in Israel. I feel that we were always taught that the more you're religious, the more you're necessarily right wing, and the more you're secular or even atheist, the more you're left wing. And I really disagree with that. I tend to challenge that, especially in the inner Israeli politics.
Mm-hmm.
We had elections, about almost a month ago, and I was actually part of a campaign to get people to vote, to encourage voting. And so I got like really into it, and you could really see how the dichotomy of like left equals, secular, progressive, and obviously, enlightened, and religious and believing necessarily means, conservative and, Arab hating, which is just not true. And it's important for me to say that I really see and meet a lot of religious Jews that are more moderate than what you might think, and that it doesn't have to be like that. That's just what the hegemony. I'm not sure if I'm saying that word right, but that's what they taught us, and but it's just not. It's not like that. And you can be connected to God, and you can be connected to this land, and you can be connected to Judaism. You can believe that, this is the place for Jews to live and still be progressive and still believe in justice and rights. I'm not inventing this. There's Rabbis for Human Rights, are a very known organization. That's just only one. There's many others that claim the same, but in the inner politics of Israel, it kind of drives me crazy that this dichotomy has kind of like always been leading us. And I just hope that, I know that most of the people listening to this are probably not Israeli, and there's I'm kind of I might be preaching to the choir, but it's important for me to say that that we don't have to go with what we were told about these things.
I always see Israel as this like land of dichotomy, right? Like secular and religious, Arab and Jewish, right wing and left wing, like all of these different sort of opposing forces. And like I think what we talked about earlier was this like psychedelic consciousness kind of enabling us to like not just like empathize and have compassion with the other side, quote unquote, but like also like not just like stereotype them as this like whole conglomerate that has a whole set of opinions, and kind of be able to like play with the intertwine the different threads of value systems that I think actually could make for like a stronger a stronger social base within the nation or within the nations of Israel and Palestine. So
Yeah, it helped us leave the boxes that we were forced into, you know. And I see it also in the more I meet more and more Palestinians, I see it as well in the Palestinian society. You know, the rules are a little different, but they have boxes as well. But you can see that when you really get to know someone, it's not that easy to fit people into boxes as much as, you know, we're supposed to.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think that's the point of psychedelics, is to literally, like, it sounds so cliche to like think outside the box or not, you know, get rid of these boxes, but like maybe to leave it on a cliche because it is so obvious almost and to the point. You know, everything you're saying here like really, really like touches me and resonates. And I hope that, I know that a lot of the people who are kind of tuning into the conference and hopefully watching our YouTube channel also feel the same. So I really want to thank you, and I'm excited for the work that you're doing, and hopefully when I make it to Israel soon, we can connect and, you know, build a lot of things together. So thank you.
Amen and inshallah. Thank you.